So I'm going to start by reading a couple sections from the passage we're looking at here today in John chapter 11, if you'll follow along with me. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. We're going to get that story a little later in John's Gospel. It says, so the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. When he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then Jesus said to his disciples, let us go back to Judea. So skipping forward to verse 32, which is an interaction he has with Mary once he's there. It says, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him? But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man from dying? And that's the predicament here, the struggle that this story introduces us to. Sorry, 1 second here. Let me get my screen set back up here. Of course it would do this on me. Okay, here we go. That'll do. All right. I think we probably don't always feel safe admitting it, but there are experiences in every Christian life for everyone who really genuinely believes in Jesus and his power, even his power to heal, the way Mary expressed when Jesus came after her brother had died, and she said, if you had been here, Lord, you could have prevented this. These things that lead to doubt, sometimes they can be intellectual. You think about the story of people who grew up in maybe a conservative church and they weren't exposed to too many ideas, and they go off to college and all of a sudden the smartest people they've ever met are giving them all these reasons to doubt certain things that they'd always just taken for granted, certain beliefs, and so that becomes a challenge to their faith. Or maybe you've had a friend who you grew up in the church with, and eventually their heart got hardened towards the message of Jesus, the gospel of the church, and they're just leveling these lines at you that are rhetorically punchy, just about what's wrong with the Christian faith and why maybe it's not something that's so worth believing. And those things can weigh on us and make us think, maybe my faith is built on a sandy foundation. Maybe there are reasons to question everything that I've just always assumed was true. But for my money, these can be jarring. They can make us struggle and ask hard questions. But the ones that cause the deepest challenges to our faith, the ones that, in my experience with counseling people who are struggling, what really weighs the heaviest and brings the greatest doubt and sometimes leads people to loss of faith is not intellectual arguments, philosophy or history or casting doubts on the truthfulness or trustworthiness of the Bible. It's experiences that really injure, wound a person's heart or their soul that happen to us, that we go through. We face hard times, as Mary and Martha were facing the death of their brother. These things just drain us of the joy that maybe we've always known in our faith in Jesus, because he wasn't there, and in their place where the joy and the sense of life and well-being go out, sadness can find its way in, grief, anxiety, fear, and all of that. It's this emotional and spiritual level that when that's wounded, we find ourselves struggling the most to trust and believe and hope in Jesus. And I think that level of our faith, strengthening that and growing that, it's like the initial preparation phases of that a bladesmith will go through before he makes a knife or a sword or maybe something less violent like a hammer or something. I like that show Forged in Fire. I don't know if any of y'all have ever watched it. It makes me think I need to buy a forge and start a new hobby, but that would probably be very dangerous for my family and myself. But it's really cool. But the most important stages of it, before they get into shaping it to make it look like a sword or putting handles on it or guards or sharpening it so that it works well, they have to prepare the metal, and oftentimes it's metal that's in parts and pieces, and so they'll stack layers of steel and they have to weld each of them together, or they'll put powdered steel in a can with things like nails or bearings or something like that, and they have to, it's called forge welding. They have to get it all to stick together well, and it's at that stage that if things don't go well at that point, then it's more likely that they'll have cracks or imperfections in the steel, so that later on, even if it looks good, when it's tested, when it hits something hard, those imperfections can lead to catastrophic failures, and they'll break. And so I think our faith is very much like that. Before it can be safely, hammered into shape and drawn out and sharpened, that we need to do that hard work at that preparation level. And that's that level of spiritual and emotional, of the heart, of the soul, of the spirit, the mind, readying ourselves with hope, with trust, with a good reason to believe in Jesus and to trust Him before our faith gets tested and we find out that it's not as resilient as we would have thought that it might be. And again, the most demanding tests, they don't come from the truth claims of science, again, history or philosophical arguments about our faith not being very intellectually well-grounded or anything like that. What puts it under the greatest stress, what puts our faith under the greatest stress are those challenges, the ugly things, the painful experiences in life that we suffer. We have the problem of death here, the loss of a young guy, Lazarus, who died too soon, and his family is hurting. Why did he get sick? Why wasn't he healed before death took him? And what's the reason for this loss? And it doesn't have to be death. It could be times you've been mistreated because of your faith in Jesus, and you look at that and say, man, where were you in that, Jesus? How come this is happening to me? How come I'm suffering for this? It could be times when we've witnessed in the church people being hypocritical, people who maybe led us to faith in Jesus, having a big fall from the faith, and it can devastate our faith. Or we see injustice or abuse in the church and wonder, did these people ever believe anything that they preached to me? And probably, though, so many of us have experienced the ugliness and the pain of death to some level or another, maybe at more distance than others, but some very, very close. I know we have people who've buried spouses, and we've also had people who've buried children in our church. And I just can't imagine the strain that would put on our faith. And it's real, and that means that we need a reason for hope in the face of all that, because that enemy, death, that test, that stressor is not going anywhere. And we look at those ugly experiences, and we look like they did when Jesus showed up after Lazarus was dead. And this happened after this amazing healing that shocked everybody, where a man who had been born blind, he gave him his sight. And they wonder, man, he could do that. Why couldn't he be here when Lazarus was sick and save his friend? He loved him so much. And in all of that, it's no wonder. We can understand why some people's faith might not hold up when they experience something like that. And here's the big thing, that if it doesn't spare us, our faith, from death and other things that's ugly and painful, stuff that feels like that, then what what is it going to do for us when we face that? What does faith in Jesus actually offer for us when we suffer? And that's what I think John chapter 11 is largely about for us. It's a story where we see what we've been learning about Jesus from the very beginning of John's gospel, that he is eternally God. He created all things, and that God who made all things came into the creation as a real flesh and blood human being. Not like kind of human, not a little human, but here we see Jesus really, really human, where we see him meet his friends who are overcome by grief, who are weeping. And as we just read, the end of that is Jesus caught up in what they were feeling and feeling it himself and weeping in the face of death, even knowing what he had the power to do and what he was going to do by his word. And so he walks that path of that emotional pain and wounding and that spiritual lostness and meets us there with where our faith is tested, weeps with us so that we can understand that he knows where we're coming from. He can feel our faith, our pain. He suffers in ways so close to us. And I think that gives us the only reason anybody can have to trust God and trust that there's something good that this universe, this world, is headed towards in the face of those really ugly and painful experiences. But the big thing is it doesn't start by, or we don't arrive there by avoiding death. It starts, as it does with Jesus, by confronting it. Death is something that we don't like to talk about, but we've all got to face it. And even Jesus, the eternal Son of God, came face to face with death. And you can imagine he could have done what he's going to do here from a distance, right? Like, he is God eternally. He could have stayed far away from it and spoken, and yet he hears this heartbreaking story about this poor family who's struggling. That a family, maybe their parents were alive, somebody losing a son, but certainly two sisters losing a brother, and you can imagine the discomfort that would have come with going and being there at that place, especially when he's the one they might have hoped could have stopped it from happening, and yet he doesn't stay away from it. This family who he was close to, he goes and he travels there to go and be with them, because it says several times he loved Lazarus and he loved Martha and he loved Mary. It tells us that these were people who were close to him, people who we're close to like this. When they hurt, we hurt. And that makes us uncomfortable, because we'd rather not experience those kinds of painful, hard, difficult emotions. But Jesus was not going to stay far away. He went, he responded, and he went and confronted death. And when he gets there, he doesn't give a theology lecture about death to tell you the meaning of it, and he doesn't give a sermon about how much better things are for Lazarus now that he's in heaven or something like that. There's truth in that, there's value in that, but he did something else. He went to be with people who were going through the stages of grief, or what I like to call the cycles of grief, because if you've been with somebody who grieves, they don't just go neatly through this process of denial, of anger, of bargaining, of acceptance. Like it circles back and comes back at times in ways you're not ready for. And so there are these cycles of grief, and it can be challenging to be with people there. But Jesus wasn't going to take the easy way out, so he went to be with these people who he loved, which meant that he became even a target of some of their struggles. He took that on with him and did it because he genuinely loved. He wanted to go and be with those who, like him, were troubled by the loss of his dear friend Lazarus. He wanted to comfort those who were mourning. But the hard thing comes in the fact that we're told, I don't know if you caught that line in there, that when he heard this, he waited a couple days and then said, let's go to Judea. And you wonder, well, you hear your friend is sick. What are you waiting for, Jesus? Have you ever been there where you're facing a trial and you're praying and you believe God hears you and you don't see him around, you don't see him present, you don't see him showing up and doing what you're begging him to do. And it feels like he's waiting on something and you have no idea what. And that's what we see there, Jesus waiting. He waited. And his sisters, Lazarus' sisters that is, they let him know actually that they're wondering why he hadn't gotten there sooner. If we read beginning here in verse 21, when Jesus arrived and began speaking with Martha, it says, "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died." We talk about those stages of grief, those cycles of grief. Can you sense a little anger in this? That's what I pick up on that. Lord, why weren't you here? We wouldn't be going through this. You had the power to stop this. And we already read this, but when he met Mary, she says something similar to him. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Again, can you feel the anger in that a little bit? Maybe, I'm sure it's tempered and it's that church kind of anger, right? Where it comes through in a look or in a tone that we try to, we don't raise our voice. We're certainly not at Jesus, and maybe it's not okay to express that, but I feel that in these words, and what's amazing is that Jesus doesn't rebuke her, like, don't you know that I've got something really cool planned here, and he doesn't chastise her, like, don't you have any faith? It says that he felt what she was feeling, what the other people were feeling. They were weeping, and he lets himself be troubled in spirit and caught up in it, and he wept as well. And to me, that is something really powerful and beautiful in so many ways. First, that Jesus is not nearly as uncomfortable with those hard emotions, those painful emotions as we might be. With this job, I've done funerals, memorials, and helped people put their dead loved ones to rest. And sometimes I almost feel like I want to get them to cry. And what I mean by that is not that I like seeing the pain or something like that, but somebody buries their spouse who they've been with for longer than I've been alive, for 50 years, and you can tell that they're hurting really badly, but there's this urge to hold back the tears and to look like they're okay, maybe because they've always been the person in the family who makes sure everybody else is okay, and so they just don't know how to feel what they're feeling and let themselves look vulnerable and let it out, or maybe they grew up in a setting where those things just weren't okay, and certainly not in church, because if you really believe that your loved one is in heaven or is in a better place or that resurrection is coming, why would you cry, is the idea here sometimes. But Jesus, he's not offended by her hard emotions here. Again, I detect anger here, and he takes it, and he's not afraid of being overwhelmed by the weeping that's all around him. He joins in it. He lets it affect him, and he weeps with them. And I just want to say that tells us so much about who God is, that God is not far away and indifferent. He's not offended and overwhelmed. He's not bothered by our hard and ugly emotions, that he actually meets us there. And he doesn't just meet us there to tell us it's all going to be okay. He meets us there to weep where we're weeping. And I just think that tells us so much. But as important as that is, I think it's also important for us to see what Jesus didn't do and what he didn't say. He didn't give us any reason to believe what sometimes certain traditions will say. These bad things happen, or your sick loved ones don't pull through because you didn't pray with enough faith. You didn't pray really believing that God could heal them. But we're told that these people really believed in Jesus. He asked them, we'll see shortly, do you believe that I have the power of resurrection? Do you believe that I'm the Son of God? And they say yes. Their faith was sincere. And he didn't say, they're in a better place or something like that. None of that. what he did is what we ought to be ready to do as well when people are suffering around us, is allow their pain to move us and to be present with them, feel what they're feeling, assuring them through our weeping and presence with them that through it all we're there, and letting that be an assurance that Jesus is there with them through it all as well. But beautifully, this isn't the end of the story. Jesus said that from the get-go, back in verse 4, that this was something tragic, something hurtful, something that would lead Jesus to weep. This man he loved, his friend, was about to die, and he says that this isn't going to end in death, but this is ultimately going to display the glory of God. And I love that so much. He was hurt. He was hurt by the pain of death like we are, and yet through that there's something more behind it. There's something greater behind all of it. The pain of it isn't the end of it. God is with us in the suffering, but ultimately there's a promise and there's a hope that goes beyond this. And that's that in Jesus, God came to face death with us. And death isn't the end, our loss. Some of us, may be feeling something that you felt not too long ago. And that sense of loss, that pain, that grief, they're not the end of the story, Jesus said. And this is why I could never, ever, I don't think, be a satisfied atheist. Because whether you believe in God or not, whether you believe that the person you loved is the image of God, we all feel that loss when a person close to us is taken from us by death. And if you believe what you confess, if you're an atheist, I don't want to offend anybody here who isn't sure whether or not God exists, but if you believe that, then even that death that's hurting you so badly is meaningless, because that's just chemistry. That's just time and chance happening to matter. There's no real loss there, and that's where it was always going anyways, and it couldn't have been different, and there's no real better thing that could have been. It's just meaning that you give to it, and it's just imaginary. But if we believe what Jesus says here, we can say no to that. Jesus tells us and shows us that through his response to death here, that is not the end of the story, and ultimately he's going to even take something that ugly and show us God's glory, God's majesty, God's power, God's goodness by calling forth resurrection. He confronts death and he calls forth resurrection. This is why Jesus didn't stop Lazarus' death, and that creates all kinds of questions in my mind, but this is the answer he gives us, that God was going to show them something. God was going to show his glory through what would take place after Jesus and all the other people who loved Lazarus had to endure this. God was going to do something. God was going to show them something. So he waited to go with his hurting friends because he wanted to show his presence and power with them. And so he suffered the grief with them, and we're told that he did this to give them, and I think ultimately to us, to give us the only real reason to have any belief in real power beyond ourselves, God's power over death, and the promise of resurrection and life. Again, this is such an amazing passage because Jesus doesn't say anything about heaven as the hope beyond this, and we believe in that. Paul says, being absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, and he talked about his own struggle facing death, and just said that, I want to go and be with Jesus because that's better. We believe in that, but that's not the ultimate hope. That's not the hope that Jesus presents here. That's not the comfort that he gives. The comfort here is resurrection, and we see it repeatedly, but these are definitely the most powerful verses in this passage where Jesus is talking to Martha here. He said to her, "Your brother will rise again." And Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe in this? This is just the most powerful stuff that I can imagine anybody, the Son of God particularly, saying and promising, announcing here, that gives us the only hope that I can think of that would give us the peace and the trust and joy in the midst of suffering to push through the hard stuff that comes our way. It's only belief in Jesus, who is the resurrection and the life, that gives us any reason when we face the ugly stuff and when we lose others or we face death ourselves as our bodies break down and we feel more and more pain and we approach that time that comes for us all until the Lord returns. This is the only thing that I think can give us hope in the face of death. And it's not pretending like it's not an enemy. It's a devastating force that affects all of us. You can't live without suffering. It's oppressive regime. There's none of us who escapes it, and it makes its power known, even when it's not right there in our face through grief and through fear, all of that. But Jesus says there's comfort in that right now. There's comfort in that right now by believing that he is the resurrection of the life, and everybody who believes in him will live, have eternal life in the face of death, though they die, and promise of resurrection beyond that. He asks the question that I think he's asking all of us right now: do you believe this? Do you believe in Jesus' resurrection power and his life-giving word, his promise that we can throw ourselves upon his waiting arms and believe that he has the saving power? He alone has resurrection power. Do you believe these words? I hope you do, but there's even more grace here than this beautiful promise. There's grace that he gives us not just by asking us to believe what he said, but showing us so we can believe because of what he did. And if you know the rest of the story, right then and there, Lazarus, his story doesn't end in death. It says, going through all this, Jesus once more was deeply moved, and he came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they rolled away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with straps of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Jesus beat death with a word. Jesus showed us that there's more than empty words, religious feel-good sayings and hopes that we can imagine, fairy tales that wouldn't it be great if that was true, that get us through hard times. No, Jesus spoke resurrection and life right there, healing in the face of death, the one evil that all of us have to face. And he said, without flinching, he is the resurrection and the life, and he showed us that. He showed us that, and by doing that, he gives us this amazing promise that the ugliest, the hardest, the most painful losses and trials that you face, when you're wondering, what's God waiting for? You're wondering, where is God? He shows us that he's right there, and that even on the other side of waiting, as we wait with him, present with us on the other side of waiting, only through Jesus' promise, there's resurrection. Jesus is the resurrection and the life. And that's what we need. There's nothing else that can help us to face death. And there's more to it than this as well. More to it than death, I would say. There's death-like struggles that we might be experiencing that Jesus promises resurrection power to heal. Maybe you barely made it to church today. I'm glad you did if that's the case. Maybe you barely made it because you're exhausted from all the stuff in your life that isn't going well. Everything around you, it may not be death, but it sure feels like it, and you know it's headed that way. And you're overwhelmed. You barely made it here. You don't see any reason to hope, or maybe you've been suffering for a long time and painfully in your body, and it's gone beyond frustration, exhaustion to just despair. Like, is this ever going to let up? Is there any hope with that? And maybe it's not just something medical. Maybe it's, again, emotional, psychological, spiritual, or you're just overwhelmed by a loss, or you just felt like you've lived in a dark place for a long time. You deal with mental illness, and it's just always there. It's something that always comes and goes, and it looks like things that destroy the best parts of your life. Maybe it comes out in anger, or there's been addiction, and it's death just touching everything around you without it being death. And you look around, and you've always believed in Jesus, and you just don't see the reason to hope, and you believe that through all of that, there must be something promised, and you just don't know what it is, and this is it. This is it. It's the promise that Jesus is there with you struggling, and he's there with you hoping that you'll hear the echoes of his words to Lazarus. Come out, come forth, rise from the dead. And so maybe you think you've lost hope. I want to offer you Jesus as the resurrection and the life. And you know this, you've heard this so many times, but just really, really give you a chance to receive that today, that he offers a promise that nobody else can give, only he can deliver it. If you came here without hope, like I said, I'm glad you're here. And sometimes we don't feel like it's going to be okay, and that's not the promise. The promise is that even as we wait, we don't rely on cheap answers. Again, he didn't say Lazarus is in a better place. He didn't say it'll all make sense someday. Just hold on to the good times, Mary and Martha. Remember those? No. He came to be with us. He didn't give us cheap hope. He gave us resurrection, and that wasn't the last time he would do that either, was it? You see, Lazarus is having an experience that we can relate to, where we wait and wonder if God's going to show up, and then ultimately there's death, and we wonder, where were you? And Jesus not only shows up and weeps and mourns with them and resurrects Lazarus there, but he walks that path himself later, doesn't he? Where he goes and he faces death. And he doesn't run from it. He doesn't hide from it. He doesn't cheapen it. He faces death, and ultimately he lets death overwhelm his body, and to take his life from him. And like Lazarus, he's put in a tomb, and a stone is rolled in front of him. And like Lazarus, he's there for days. But then ultimately, the one who promised that he is the resurrection and the life, that he could give us life, he didn't ask us to go through something that he wouldn't go through himself. He went through it himself, and he brought resurrection. He himself showed us the path that he asked us to walk. He didn't give us orders from a distance and say, go and do as I say, not as I do. He went and he walked that path before us. And that's why we can have hope, that through the ugly stuff, he's there with us. And even in the tomb, even in death, Jesus has gone there before us, and he's promising us life and resurrection. And that means we can be with people who are suffering, because we can rest in the hope that Jesus is with us through that. He gave us something so real here. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Death will never win. Resurrection is promise. It's our reward. It's coming. He's gonna give us life on the other end of it, just as he received it and as he gave life to Lazarus there. And again, this is where there's hope. This is the only place that I can say, whatever comes, we can get through it because of who Jesus is and the path that he walked before us. I want to invite the worship team to make your way up here. I mean, I don't know who it is who might be here that's struggling with the doubt and wondering where Jesus is in it, wondering why the healing hasn't come, wondering when resurrection is going to fix and restore everything that I've lost, that I feel like I just don't know if I can't live without it, or just make things right and heal what's broken. I don't know who you are, but what I can offer you is the words that Jesus offered. He's the resurrection and the life. And he's there with you in it. He wants you to trust and believe him in that, and he doesn't ask you to do it blindly. He asks you to see the way he spoke and gave life to a dead man. And he asks you to follow him in trust the way that he went to the cross, to the tomb, and beyond that, after days in the tomb, to resurrection. That's going to be our story also. And I think there's real hope in that. It's not hope without struggle. It's not hope without pain. But it's the hope of the presence of the God who suffered and who wept. He wept. And he's going to call forth resurrection for everyone who believes in him. I hope you'll believe in him if you don't. Will you stand? We'll pray. Oh, Lord Jesus, we thank you that just by your voice you give life to the dead. And long before we await that, we know that you're with us through everything that we suffer. Lord, we confess our struggles to find hope when the pain is the greatest. And we, Lord, we some of us here just really, really need a sense of your presence, because we might be struggling, wondering what you're waiting for. We thank you that you invite us to confess that, and we're not too much for you. Our pain doesn't burden you or overwhelm you, but you're there weeping with us in it. And we can look to this story of the power of your word to resurrect everything and to crush death. And we can see your witness in taking the same path, facing death, enduring the cross, days in the tomb, and resurrection. And that will be the story of every life lost and ours, Lord, who believe. God, will you give us hope and trust and faith to believe that today? Will you comfort those who are in that space and need that message so badly? Would you let them hear that word that Lazarus heard when he was raised to life? Come forth and bring healing in places they can't imagine anything but a miracle will fix. But no matter what, give us hope through the story of your cross and resurrection, that you're with us through it all, and there's eternal life on the other end for those who trust. Lord, strengthen our trust. Give us resolve, resilience to believe in the hope that you are the resurrection.